Hi everyone, it's Megan from Tiny Orchard Quilts, and today we are going to be tackling some scraps because I have a lot of scraps and I'm sure you have a lot of scraps, and they just kind of come out of nowhere and start kind of taking over your room if you don't stay on top of them. So today we're going to take a bunch of them, sew them together, and make a quilt top. I will be using my 5-inch square scraps. If you haven't seen my scrap management video, I take all of my scraps and I cut them down into pre-cut sizes. So I have kind of a scrappy layer cake of 10-inch squares and a bunch of 5-inch squares, and I kind of rainbow ties them so that they're really easy to pull from when I want to do a project like this. If you don't have enough scraps or yours aren't already cut into 5-inch squares, this is also very easy to do with fat quarters or yardage that you have laying around, like all of these that I need to be using up. So there's a couple of colors in this quilt that I don't have enough 5-inch squares, so you'll see me cutting up the fat quarters to kind of make up the difference. So we'll go over that. This is our quilt for today. It's completely made up of 5-inch squares and it's very beginner friendly. So you can get this little one-page kind of cheat sheet reference with the fabric requirements, kind of the general layout, on my website, and I'll have the description below. It's just a free download PDF, and I hope you'll go check it out. Here are my fabric choices for this quilt. I'm generally following the color scheme from the pattern. I have a light pink right here, and then where those light pinks come together in the center of the square, the dark pink, I'm actually going to use kind of this fuchsia purple. I have light yellows and the dark yellow kind of chartreusey color that I'm using for the center of the yellow squares. And then there are the squares where the yellow and pink combine to create kind of this melony color. And then for the background, I'm using low volumes, and I kind of whittled through my collection to have some kind of quieter low volumes. I'm sure you guys know the low volumes that I'm talking about that are like really bright and really crazy and very in your face. And I just wanted this background to blend a little bit more since there was so much going on with the prints. So as you notice, I do not have enough of the pink, yellow, and white to have enough 5-inch squares for the full pattern. So I'm going to be taking these fat quarters and chopping them up to supplement my scraps. I'm going to press these fat quarters since they've been folded up on boards for quite a while, and then we'll chop them up. And now we're ready to cut our 5-inch squares. Now this is, I think, 7 or 8 layers. So I cut a lot of layers. That's just kind of my thing. I don't like to repeat work because, I don't know, I don't have time for that. So I'm just going to be a rebel and cut 8 layers. You can split this up if you're not comfortable doing this, but I use a big blade and I change it often. So I like to make quick work of what I'm doing. So now that we have a squared up edge and all of the fat quarters have this nice clean edge, move over 5 inches and start making our subcuts. There's one. Now we should be able to get 3 5-inch strips out of each fat quarter because it should be 18 inches wide this way. And one more. I always double check by counting because I've made that mistake in the past where I thought I was over 5 and I was really only over 4 and ended up wasting a lot of fabric. So I always just double check. Now, what to do with these leftovers? Now, theoretically, they should be at least 2.5 inches wide, so you could save them for a scrappy binding, or you could just add them to your Scrappy fabric collection, your string box, which is what I'm going to do. And these are trash. Okay, now that we have this cleaned up, we're going to carefully rotate it. And now we can start cutting our 5-inch squares out of this strip. And I use the lines on my mat. I know a lot of people don't. They prefer using the ruler. But this is the way I learned, and so I'm just kind of stuck with it. So what I do is, this is the selvage end where they're all lined up. And this is where the selvage was that I trimmed off. So I am aligning this just past one of the lines on my mat so that I can make another clean squaring cut. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And see, now we can see how we have, theoretically, we should be able to get another full charm square out of this, but this fabric wasn't long enough. Now, some of the other ones, it looks like all the other ones are over this line right here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to cut on this line. And so I'm just making sure that they all overlap that line just enough. So I'm going to lose this pink one, but I've cut enough pink fat quarters to still end up with enough of the 5-inch squares that I need for the pattern. And we'll double check before we start sewing. Okay. I consider these trash. They're too small for me. So just get rid of those. And this is not quite a full charm square, so it goes into the scrap bin. So now we have the pink, yellow, and white. To separate out and add to our piles over there. Now I'm going to quickly speed through these other 5-inch strips and join you when I have all of my squares done and sorted. I have all of my charm squares cut from the fat quarters that I needed to chop up to make up the difference between my scraps and the pattern requirements. And now I'm going to lay out these blocks in preparation to move them to my machine to sew them. Now, I am going to chain piece all 25 blocks all at the same time. If you are not comfortable doing that, then you can do just the pink blocks, the block A's, and then the block B's, and then the block C's. But I'm going to show you how I save time by doing it all at once. So I'm going to start here. I have all of my white squares in place since all the blocks have white squares in the corners. So I'm going to make 9 block A's, which means I need my light pink and my dark pink / purple. Now I know that there are 9 squares here, so I'm just going to plop those in the middle. And now I need 9 squares in each of these light pink spaces to complete this block. Now I have 25 white squares, 9 light pink squares, and 9 purple squares. Now I need to make 12 block B's. So I'm going to add 12 more light pink squares here, all of my coral squares to the center, and then 12 light yellow squares top and bottom. I'm just following the layout of this 9 patch. Okay, that was 12 block B's laid out. Coral, pink, yellow, and the white corners. Now I just have 4 block C's to add to the top. And there we have it. That's 25 blocks laid out for chain piecing. Now I need to move them over to my sewing machine, and I'll show you how I chain piece them and keep these all in order. We've moved over to the sewing machine, and I have all the blocks laid out exactly like they were over at the cutting table, and I'm ready to start sewing. Now, I always piece 9 patches or 16 patches, however many blocks I'm sewing together, in the same way, and that's what helps keeps me organized. I always start sewing these 2 piles together, and I'll sew all of them together, chain pieced, trim them all, press them all, and return them to this spot so that I don't get too many pieces moving at the same time. I'm done piecing all of my pile 1 to pile 2, and now it is time to trim these all apart but keep them in order. So I've got my little tool here. You could also use a pair of scissors, and I just clip them, and then I set them in a pile, all going the same way. Okay, now this pile is now oriented with the top yellow blocks on top here. So when I press them, like if I pressed this one and put it in a pile and then press this one and added it, they would be in reverse order. Like I would have my yellow squares at the bottom when I want to have my yellow squares on the top. So I'm going to flip this over and press these first. So press one at a time into a new pile, and then that pile will be right side up to put back in place over here. Okay, so we have our pile from the pressing surface all ready to go, and we can put it back in place to kind of keep our block pieces in order. So the next step would be to sew pile 4 to pile 5, press it, get it back in place, and then do the same thing with pile 7 and 8, so that we'll have 3 sets of 2 blocks sewn together. So I'm going to do that and come right back. So I'm going to do just like I did sewing these together, except I'm going to pick up this pair and this pile and sew them together. Let me move my headphones. We have all of our rows pieced together, and now it's time to start joining rows. And I'm going to work with the top 2 first, but it doesn't matter. You can join these 2, but I always just tend to start at the top so I keep things organized. So there's really not enough room to put them right here, so I'm just going to grab them one at a time as I get them to the machine. Now, since I have pressed my seam allowances open, there's not really an opportunity for them to kind of nest. And so I am going to take just a few seconds to pin the intersections of where the seams come together. This is going to be exactly the same as attaching the first 2 rows. And just to make things a little simpler on myself, I'm going to rotate this around so that it's a little easier for me to fold down and grab this and pin. Okay guys, they're all done. All 25 blocks pieced it once. Now this did take me kind of 2 sessions. I started yesterday and got through to just adding the bottom row to all of these blocks and finished that up and pressed them all and lightly starched them this morning. So now it is time to lay them out and assemble our rows. Okay, we have all 25 blocks made. We have 9 block A's, 12 block B's, and 4 block C's. So let's assemble a row. I'm going to make a row A, which is the first row on this pattern. And I don't need any block C's for this row, so I'm just going to set these aside for right now. Now for this row, I need 3 block A's and 2 block B's. So I'm going to kind of lay those out here and then stack them up in order. So there's block A, block B, okay, I'm pretty happy with that layout. I generally do not lay out a whole quilt at one time. I don't have a large design wall, so I'd be doing it on the floor, which is kind of a pain. So for scrappy quilts like this, I just sewed them together in the order that they came off the machine, and I can shuffle the rows a little bit. But in situations like this, like there's 4 of the same print right here, so I might swap out this block while I'm looking at it for a different block A. Let's just grab one randomly. One looks good. And that's about as fussy as I get with layout. Now, while you're laying these out, be sure to keep in mind that the block B's need to be oriented with the yellow on the top and bottom rather than on the side, because you want that pink stripe to go across the top. See, we're assembling this row right here, so we want the pink stripe to continue across the middle of the blocks. So this needs to go this way. So then I pick them up in order, left to right, making a pile. So this is my row 1, and I take a little pin and I stick it in the upper left corner of the first block of the row, just so I don't get twisted around getting it to my sewing machine, because I want to be sure that I'm sewing these edges together into this kind of row instead of sewing them this way, which would not give me the row A layout that I'm looking for. So that little pin is just a reference for me. So let's take this over to the sewing machine and sew together this row. All right, we're here at the sewing machine. I have my blocks aligned with my pin in the upper left corner, and I'm ready to sew. So how I keep these organized is I know that this block is going to be the leftmost block in this row. So I take that and then I put this one on top so that I'm sure to be sewing this side. And if you need to open it up and make sure that that pink stripe is going through the middle, then do that. So I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to pin this edge and sew it together. All right, that's block 1 and 2. And I want to make sure that this pin stays in the far left corner. So I'm going to be sewing this edge to the next block in the pile. So I'm just going to take it and flip it over and then lift up this edge and pin. That row is totally done, and the pink stripe is going all the way across with yellow stripes coming down. So we are ready to press this row, and then we'll make a row B. Okay, we're ready to make row 2, and for that we need block B's and block C's. So I'm just going to scooch these block A's out of the way and focus on these 2. Now here's where the block rotation comes into play. We need these block B's to be going this way so that we have the yellow stripe continuing left to right across the row. So we need a block B and a block C. Let's sew this together, and then I will whip through the 3 remaining rows and we'll get to laying out the quilt. Here we are. We have 5 rows all sewn together. I have 3 row 1s and 2 row 2s, and you can see how this yellow stripe comes through the middle of the yellow 2s. So our pattern has us alternate row 1 and row 2, ending with a row 1. So I'm just going to stack them up however I grab them and start sewing them together. So this is row 2. So I need row 1, row 2, row 1, row 2, and end with a row 1. There we go. I'm going to take the first 2 rows here, and I still have the pin in the upper left corner, and I'm going to keep that pin in the upper left corner while I assemble this whole quilt. So this is a row 1, and this is a row 2. So we want to sew these together along this bottom edge. So I'm just going to fold it up, and then I'm going to take some time to pin this lower edge. So here it is. I got all 5 rows sewed together according to the pattern, and I think it turned out really great. I think the colors are amazing, and it's a really fun scrappy quilt. And I just want to point out a few things that I learned while putting this together. So there you have it. There's our finished quilt. It came together really easily, and it was a lot of fun to make. Sewing together just consistently 5-inch squares makes this very beginner friendly, and if you have a lot of scraps, it's a great way to use things up. Now, I did learn a little bit while I was making this. There are a few squares, like this one, that maybe I should have reserved for a darker pink. I don't think they blend really well into the pink stripes, but overall, I think the scrappy look is a lot of fun and covers up a lot of errors, I would say, because let me see if I can find one. There are a couple of squares in this quilt from this print that are sewn the wrong way around. So the back of the fabric is actually showing, and I'm not going to fix it. I noticed it while I was pressing some of the blocks, and it's fine. It will not be my first quilt with fabrics that are the wrong way out, and no one has ever noticed in the past. So I'm just going to leave it and save myself a little bit of frustration, because your quilting time is precious, and you don't want to use it ripping things out and resewing them. So I'm going to get this on the long arm and quilt it up. If you have any ideas of how I should quilt it, be sure to drop a comment below. I would love to hear them, because I really do struggle with scrappy quilts. I think of myself mostly as a custom quilter, and so not quilting it to death is kind of hard. Like, doing an all over pattern for me is more of a stretch. So I would love to hear what you think. So if you liked this video, I have new videos every Monday morning here on my YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe, and I will see you again next Monday. Oh, and the PDF pattern for this quilt is free on my website. I think you probably just have to make an account to be able to download it, but the link is in the description below if you'd like to download it for the fabric requirements and some general instructions to accompany this video. So I hope you guys have an amazing week, and I will see you again next Monday. Bye.